just to be clear, are you blaming NATO for Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine?
Absolutely. What do you mean? You had Kamala
When
Harris.
did you start? At
Hold
what
on,
point?
hold on.
How old are you? How old are you?
29. I'm 29.
At what point did you start gargling like Vladimir Putin's nutsack?
Hutch, you act like he couldn't take Kiev in a weekend if he wanted to.
He tried.
Really don't think, surely
what do
you're
you
not
mean?
that ignorant. You don't.
They literally
you don't think
tried.
that-
You're going to confidently tell me that Jared Kushner was more qualified to take over this hedge fund than Hunter Biden was to sit on an energy board in Ukraine. How could you possibly know that if you don't know anything about Hunter
you wanna
Biden?
Know why? Because what successful person do you know is smoking crack? No, seriously.
This is going to blow your mind, but a lot of really wealthy people kind of like cocaine. I know this is heartbreaking.
We're not talking about cocaine. We're talking about crack.
What do you think crack is?
I know what crack is.
What is it?
I enjoy the occasional cocaine myself, but I'm just saying crack is just a cheaper form of just cocaine. It's like it's a rock form. It's just so super cheap.
Hello.
Hey.
Is this Slim Chunk?
Yeah, it is. What's up, man?
Slim Chunk. Does this not bother you?
So what I will say about Elon is like he's had some takes the past couple months, and like one that I didn't really agree with was like the H-1B visas. So the thing with Elon is like he's new to the whole MAGA movement, and I feel like he is speaking on behalf of a lot of us voters when a lot of us don't agree with some of the things that he says.
Okay, I'm being very specific here. Elon, for the last week, more than a week, has directly accused Joe Biden of deliberately marooning these United States astronauts at the International Space Station and needlessly delaying their return home just to make him look bad. There has been a SpaceX vehicle docked at the ISS since August that could have taken them home at any moment. Those astronauts were asked to stay on longer. It has nothing to do with making Elon look bad. You know this, right?
So I don't really, I don't really care too much about this topic, but what I will say is if NASA was not able to go up to the space station to, bring these people home and the only other option was Elon, and I think that they would decline the option of giving Elon.
Whoa, let me stop.
Mission.
Wait,
Okay.
stop. Let me stop you there. NASA contracts with SpaceX constantly. Constantly.
Okay, I'm sure that's been the case, but
to be clear, for years, NASA has contracted SpaceX to transport them into space. They've been doing this for years.
I believe that. I know that. I understand that. But I think since he has come out and been so supportive of the Republican Party and Donald Trump, I feel like if we were in a Kamala administration right now, the number of contracts and the number of funding that would go towards SpaceX would not be nearly what it was, like, let's say in 2021 or 2022.
Do you know when NASA agreed to allow SpaceX to take these specific astronauts home? Do you know when that was agreed?
No, I don't. But before you say, I mean, like, once again, I'm not like a
Let me just tell you. It was in September when Biden was president. This was all hashed out in September.
Well, when was I know that he endorsed him after the Trump assassination attempt. When was that? Was that in September? I don't remember.
The assassination attempt was in July.
Okay, so yeah, that was after it.
Yes.
Gotcha. No, I mean, listen, it may be.
That's would you concede that's a crazy thing to lie about? It's a lie. It's not like him not knowing all the details. Elon is lying, just patently lying. The former commander of the ISS came out and said, this is a lie. The astronauts themselves, the ones that are in space right now, have come out and said, this is a lie. It's not true. We were not abandoned.
Okay, well, you know what? I mean, regardless, he could be, obviously, he probably is spinning it to make himself look better or, like, to make it look like a political thing. But once again, like...
Does that not drive you insane? Does that not make you think, like, okay, well, I don't trust this guy. How can I trust anything he says about Doge if he's willing to lie about something so petty and so stupid and so easily disprovable?
I think in the grand scheme of what he's trying to accomplish and what the movement is trying to accomplish, this is such a small feat in the whole goal of this administration that it's like not even worth talking about.
No, but it speaks to his character. If he would so flippantly lie about something so easily disprovable, why should I, as a private citizen, trust anything he says on the Doge account? if he's willing to lie about something so silly? Why would you,
I mean,
or more to the point, why would you trust anything coming out of Doge when you know that he would just lie to make himself like look like a victim and try to make Biden look like cartoonishly evil?
well, all I know is that we're $36 trillion in debt. And there's a serious problem with the deficit right now. And that, if we don't eventually cut spending and bring in more revenue through either tariffs, we have to cut spending and bring in more revenue. And one way that Trump is trying to do that is through tariffs and cutting government spending. And Democrats are literally like going crazy that we're cutting the federal government when Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich in, 1997, agreed that they were going to try to eliminate the deficit by 2002. So like, this isn't a new thing. Like, Democrats think this is like, this came out of nowhere and that we're like completely dismantling the government. That's not true. Like, Democrats have been advocating for this for such a long time. But since
not just
since
advocating, hold on, wait, not just advocating. Are you aware that every modern Democratic president has reduced the deficit? And every single,
I know the numbers.
hold on.
Yes.
And every single modern Republican president has increased the deficit. Are you aware of this?
Well, I mean, you had George Bush, who, 9/11 happened and the war happened, which obviously I don't agree with and nobody agrees with. And I've seen,
he blew up the
Trump
deficit.
deficit numbers as well. And I know that, I don't. First of all, I don't really understand how these numbers work because, I've seen the numbers. I was looking at them 2 days ago when you were talking about them. It's I saw Biden was lowering the deficit, but
yes, he did.
I don't understand how that's the case when inflation. The only way that I can logically think about that and categorize it is they printed so much money. We know what the inflation rate was 2 years ago. Literally everybody thought we were going to go into have another depression. So I don't understand how the deficit could be lowered at such a significant rate.
Because he paid for his bills.
Because so extremely high.
Because he paid for his bills, but he offset the cost of his bills by raising taxes on corporations and wealthy people. He actually did the thing that Republicans talk about doing, but then they never do. They just, Donald Trump, he was going to, initially they wanted to offset the cost of the tax cuts by eliminating the ACA and getting rid of a significant amount of government health subsidies. They failed to do that. And then they just passed the tax cuts anyways. It wasn't even COVID spending that represented the bulk of the deficit increase on his watch. It was the tax cuts. He didn't pay for it. It was wildly, for somebody who calls himself a conservative, I would assume that you would be very disturbed by that, right? Cutting tax revenue and without any kind of offset, just willingly upping the deficit for what? Did it trickle down?
No, we did offset it through tariffs. We had we're in the middle of in the middle of a trade war with China. We had high tariffs on China.
You think the tariffs?
What do you mean
You're telling me you think the tariffs paid for the tax cuts in 2017?
Well, no. So here's how it's going to work. Obviously, I'm a conservative, and I believe in lower taxes, right, and less government intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to cut government spending. We're going to have fair trade deals with other countries because obviously, as you know, these countries have been unfairly taxing the United States since the Cold War. What do you mean who? Every single country.
Give me specific examples of a problem that let's just focus on Canada and Mexico right now. Do you think it's odd that Donald Trump is complaining about the trade deal that he negotiated?
Well,
don't you think that's kind of weird? He's accusing Mexico and Canada of ripping off America when he negotiated that deal.
Well, I don't know if you listened to the Marco Rubio interview that he did I think it was yesterday. But basically, when Trudeau came to Mar-a-Lago, a few weeks after Trump won the election, he told Trump that if we increase the tariffs on Canada, to the same level that they tariff us, that Canada will cease to exist. Now, my question to you is, why is it
let me stop you there, though. He didn't. Trump didn't raise tariffs to match what Canada was doing to us. Canada did not have universal 25% across the board tariffs on the United States. What Trump proposed and then walked back was well above any kind of tariffs that Canada has on United States products. It was a universal tariff policy. Everything coming in from Canada, we're going to tariff at 25%. He talked about lowering it maybe a little bit for oil, but that went well above any kind of tariff program that Canada had against United States companies.
Well, I mean, I know we did walk it back a little bit. I think it's just reciprocal tariffs now that he's proposing.
But that's what he's proposing. I'm telling you, he's lying to you. When he says we're going to do 25% tariffs on Canada, that's not reciprocal. That's just an act of aggression. That's just him going well above the tariffs that Canada had with us.
No, as far as I understand it, we're not going to be doing. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding what his policy is. What I understand is that instead of the flat 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, we're just going to be doing reciprocal tariffs on not just those two countries, but across the board in every country that we do trade with. So, whatever, if Canada's charging us 15% tariffs on everything coming into their country, we're going to charge them 15%.
That's not what's happening, though. But that's not what's happening, though.
Hold on, let me go back to my original point. Trudeau came to Mar-a-Lago and told Trump that if we increase tariffs on their country, that their country is going to cease to exist. That's literally what he said.
No.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And let me ask you a question.
Who'd you get that quote from?
Marco Rubio on the interview we did yesterday.
No.
I'm just telling you what Marco Rubio said. He, as much as I know he's a Republican, you don't agree with Republicans, but he's a pretty stand-up guy, and he most of the time he tells it how it is. So, and I think he's doing a great job as a Secretary of State. But I'm asking you, why is it our responsibility to coddle Canada?
We're not coddling Canada.
What do you mean we're not?
We are not coddling. We are not coddling Canada. Canada and Mexico are our two biggest trading partners. We share contiguous landmass with these countries. They've been our two biggest trading partners for decades right now. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. We all benefit.
Hutch.
We all benefit. Canada, Mexico, United States.
We don't.
We benefit.
Don't. That's a lie.
Of course we do.
No, it's not. It's a lie. They don't spend any money on defense. They literally sit there.
You don't think that we pay less? You don't think that we pay less for goods because of these trade agreements? You don't think we're paying less for shit like tomatoes because of these trade agreements?
Hutch, do you think that they're not charging us more than what we're charging them? Do you think that we give Canada and Mexico discount, like more of a discount?
Even if I took you at what you're saying at face value, who negotiated that deal? The U.S., Mexico, and Canada agreement. Who negotiated that deal?
Yeah, I know that went into place. That was
just
before
answer the question.
COVID.
Answer the question.
I know it was Trump. I understand.
But what are you complaining about?
Hold on, I'll tell you, it's a different world we're living in now, Hutch. We're post-COVID. We have a $36 trillion debt. We are not the rich country we were in 2019. In 2019, we were miles ahead of the whole entire world.
So Trump blows up the deficit, blows up our debt, and then after he does that, he decides he wants to start playing hardball with Canada and Mexico to recoup the losses that he incurred through his policy of cutting taxes without offsetting any of those cuts. Now we're just going to pick a fight with Canada and Mexico because he blew up our debt.
Well, hold on. You know that the world is in a different. Let's stick to the United States. Our economy is in a much different place than it was in 2019. Can we agree on that?
Of course.
Okay. So, and we are the people that are providing their sole defenses. If let's just say, China or Russia invaded Canada or Mexico tomorrow, you know what would happen? We would be their sole defenders. Okay. So I don't think it's fair that since we're the only
Isn't Canada a part of NATO?
Canada's defense budget is probably not even like a 15th of the United States. These countries.
Do you know what NATO is?
It's a defensive alliance. I know.
Okay, and what is Article 5?
I don't know. You enlighten me. What is it?
Attack on one is an attack on all. If any NATO country gets attacked, every other NATO country comes to their defense.
Okay, and that's great, right? But here's the problem: when we have a bigger budget than every single NATO country combined times like 3. It's not a fair game. Like, why do we have to be the big brother for every single one of these countries?
Why does the United States, a country with 330 million people, pay more into our defense budget than Canada, who doesn't even have 40 million? Is that a serious question?
What about the European Union? How many people live in the European Union? I mean, it's the same thing. It's going to be around the same number, if not more, is it not?
It's going to be no, in the entire European Union. I think it's over 400 million people.
Okay, well then there you go. But if you collectively add these European unions together, they literally spend nothing on defense, and they're sitting here.
No, they don't.
What are you talking about?
What do you mean they don't spend anything on defense? What an amazing thing to say. You're telling me that the entire European Union basically doesn't spend anything on their own defense? That's
Hutch,
the claim?
You just heard J.D. Vance at the security conference begging these countries to increase their defense budget from 2% to 5%.
We don't even spend 5% on our own budget or on our own defense. I don't believe. Hold on.
We spend $800 billion a year.
That's probably not true. But we're the world's dominant superpower, so that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, is it too much to ask that Germany and Poland and these countries that are actually like relatively close to Ukraine to increase their defense budget instead of relying on us for defense?
Hold on, I just want to know, like, how do you personally benefit if Germany goes from like spending 2% to 3% of their GDP on defense? Like, how do you benefit from that? I'm just curious.
Well, since I live and reside in the United States, it is better for our allies to be stronger. So it would benefit me by protecting my homeland, my country.
Listen, I agree. It's really important to have strong allies. So why is Donald Trump picking a fight with all of our allies right now? Don't you think it's kind of bizarre? Don't you think it's kind of bizarre that he has? Hold on. Don't you think it's kind of bizarre that he has nothing but nice things or neutral at worst to say about Vladimir Putin? And he, at the same time, he's picking a fight with Canada, Mexico, Germany, England, Ukraine. Isn't that crazy to you?
No, I don't think it is crazy.
You don't think it's crazy for Donald Trump to blame Ukraine for being invaded?
Okay, so obviously I'm hoping you know the history. So we always promised Russia after the fall of the USSR that NATO would not expand its borders east.
There was never any formal agreement. There was never any no. You want something like that official, you get that down in writing. There was never any formal agreement at all that there would be no kind of like eastward movement. Are you so hold on, just to be clear, are you blaming NATO for Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine?
Absolutely. What do you mean? You had Kamala Harris.
When did you start? At what point? How old are you? I'm
29.
At what point did you start gargling like Vladimir Putin's nutsack? When did that happen? What year did you decide? Oh yeah, that guy could be a strong ally, but Ukraine, them. When did that happen?
Hold on. Let me just finish what I was going to say. In 2022, you had Kamala Harris at the Munich conference saying that Ukraine was guaranteed to have defenders and was going to be admitted into NATO in 2022.
No, she did not.
Yes, she did.
No, she did not.
2022 Munich conference. Yes, she did.
Let me pull this up. You're telling me that Kamala got up there and said that Ukraine, we're going to make them a part of like NATO right now?
That was the whole thing. The reason that Russia went into Ukraine is because we were talking about giving Ukraine a NATO membership. And
why did Vladimir Putin tell Tucker Carlson he went into Ukraine and took it because it's historically Russian territory?
Okay, so let me ask you this question.
No! Answer that question. Why did Vladimir Putin tell Tucker Carlson in that hour-and-a-half interview, we invaded Ukraine because it is historically Russia?
So, as I understand it, the Donbass region, eastern Ukraine, is ethnically Russian. They speak Russian. They're in schools. They're taught Russian. That's what they speak.
Okay, so if Mexico went into a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood of LA and said, you know what, we're going to annex that.
It's completely different. And first of all, you're acting. Hold on, because one, LA is not on the border. Okay,
Texas.
LA is
Texas then. Texas. There's plenty of predominantly Hispanic communities along the Texas-Mexico border. Let's say Mexico decides, you know what?
Hold on.
90% of the people here are ethnically Mexican, so we're just going to take this.
Well, I guarantee you, if you ask the people living in that neighborhood, hey, which country do you want to belong to? Do you want to belong to the cartel overran Mexico, or do you want to belong to the United States? I can almost guarantee you, no matter what place you go into, they will always say the United States. So it's completely different. Okay, that's number one. Okay, and number two, the eastern part of Ukraine, Donbass, like I said, they're ethnically Russian. They only speak Russian. They teach Russian. They haven't participated in Ukrainian elections in the past like 25 years. They don't identify with Ukraine. They never
Donbass
have.
has
And
not participated in Ukrainian elections? Where did you learn that?
Yes. Yeah, you can fact check me on that, but I heard that and read that, and that's supposedly the case. So they haven't participated in Ukrainian elections.
Let me just fact check that real quick.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean,
I've never heard that claim before.
I could be wildly off, but that's what I heard and that's what I read. So I'm hoping that's right.
I'm not finding anything to substantiate what you're saying. What you're saying might be true. I just can't find what you were looking at. Just to be clear.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, I did see it, and I just thought it was pretty interesting when I read it. But I mean, it could be false, could be true. I don't know. But regardless, they speak Russian and they identify as Russian. So, and I'm pretty sure if you had them vote, they would rather be a part of Russia, which is the case. I'm almost positive. So, it was a mixture of that region. Oh yeah, and it was also Zelensky. What did he do? He banned schools from teaching Russian. He banned Russian literature.
I know that's not true. They did not ban the Russian language in Ukraine. That's complete bullshit. I just want to ask you. Let me put up a hypothetical right now. Let's say there was a territory that along the Washington border with Canada. Let's say you had like a small Canadian community, and they identified more with American culture and spoke English and had expressed a desire to be a part of America. Would we then be justified in militarily invading and annexing that portion of Canada? Is that the standard you want to like? We're talking about the post-Cold War era. This is supposed to be the end of like the age of empire, that kind of a thing. Are you saying we would be justified in that moment to militarily invade?
I think this is not a good hypothetical, and I'll tell you why. Because I'll tell you why. Because Canada has always, like we were talking about earlier, has always been our biggest ally. So
but I'm constructing a hypothetical.
I know, but it's
not meant to be taken it's not meant to be taken literally. Let's just say, for the sake of this argument, let's do a thought experiment. Would America be justified in like sending in our military, bombing the shit out of Canada, killing thousands of them, kidnapping thousands of their kids and bringing them into the United States, and otherwise engaging in a hostile military action against Canada because this one community wanted to identified as being American? Would that be justified?
Listen, I like doing hypotheticals, but I disagree with this premise because it's completely different.
It's not a premise. It's a hypothetical. It's not a premise.
But it's not. You can't compare them because once again, Canada has been our ally. Russia has always notoriously been Ukraine's enemy. Russia during the Stalin era literally killed 10 million Ukrainians, starved to death. They hate Russia. They've always hated Russia. So it's not fair to compare, these hypotheticals that you're doing. In
my mind, that's less justified. Then you have this country that fiercely believes in its own sovereign right to exist.
So
they fiercely reject the idea that they're just this vassal or rather a part of the Russian Empire.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pivot just a little bit, just to the bigger.
I don't understand why people like you can't just identify a despot like Putin. What he did was just a naked land grab. He decided.
I'll tell you why.
Vladimir Putin decided that's ours. I'm gonna take that, whether or not they like it. That's what he did.
So this is what I'll say.
He's killed hundreds of thousands of people in the process of doing this. And people like you who claim to be conservative, the party of Reagan, the conservatives in this country used to be the ones that were the most hawkish against Soviet expansion all throughout the Cold War. People like you,
the party has changed,
and you think Putin is number one. Putin, you think he's a good leader? Number two, you think he's an ally to the United States?
So let me explain to you. So I'm going to talk about the bigger picture and what I believe in. So one, I think that Trump, if it was up to me and there was no backlash, I could decide how this outcome comes, I would give the land that Russia already occupies to Russia. Okay, I would give the Donbass region, I would give it to Russia. Okay.
Why?
Because once again, they're ethnically Russian, they identify as Russian, and Ukraine doesn't have the authority to tell Russia what to do because they are triple the size of the country, has 10x the military power, and so on and so forth. But
Okay.
let me just continue. Hold on, let me just continue.
Then fine. I want to take a third of Canada. We have a bigger.
We could.
But you're saying it's justified because they can. You're saying it's justified because Ukraine doesn't have the manpower to stop it. I could use that justification to say that we should take a third of Mexico or a third of Canada. They can't stop us. Good luck with the.
Hutch, I mean, it's literally the way of the world. That's always how the world has worked. Like the bigger powers are gonna grab up land. That's how every single colonial power did throughout the 17th and 18th century.
We are in the post-war era. We're in the post-World War II era.
I understand.
That
okay,
shit,
but let me tell you
is
this.
supposed to stop. And organizations like NATO exist to prevent this very thing that you're talking about right now.
They're not a part of NATO.
That's not my point. That's not my point, though. I'm saying organizations like NATO exist to stop this that pre-World War II kind of policy that all these different countries had of just like might equals right, and if we have the military and we want their resources, we're just going to go in and take it. We live in the post-war era now where that shit is supposed to stop. We're supposed to be living in an era of like international cooperation. And if ultimately Vladimir Putin is successful in swallowing up Ukraine, why would he stop there? Why would he stop? Why would he stop at that point?
Hutch, you act like he couldn't take Kiev in a weekend if he wanted to.
He tried.
Really don't think that. You don't think that the Russian?
He tried.
Hutch, I mean, come on. Surely you're not that ignorant. You don't.
They literally tried, bro. Their goal.
Think that the Russian military could deploy and take Kiev in 1 week? Do you really think that?
Then why don't they?
Because it's not their goal. That's not their goal. It never has.
It literally was that their goal was to march into Kiev in the first week. What do you mean I'm wrong? That was their
wrong, Hutch.
Hold on a second. Are you saying that was not their stated intention, was to march to Kyiv in the first week of the conflict?
Hutch, it's wrong. That was never their goal. Their goal was to secure the pass to the Black Sea. They had no access to the Black Sea. What is that sea called south of Ukraine? Is it the Black Sea? That was always their goal. Their goal was never to take over Kiev. That was never the goal. Okay,
Bro,
and if the Russian military, you really don't think that the country of Russia could overrun the capital of Ukraine in a week if they fully deployed?
Even if you were to concede that was their entire goal, let's just pretend that you agree that his goal was to take over Ukraine. You're saying that we should just allow that to happen because they have a bigger military and fuck them.
No.
What's wrong with him trying to take over Kyiv? Because you just said a moment ago that. What?
You're not seeing the bigger. You guys on the left don't see the bigger picture here, and this is part of why JD Vance. No. Let me just.
You guys
say what I'm
have
say.
completely.
Hold on.
You and your movement have completely sold us out to our worst enemies. You're worse. Donald Trump is worse than Neville Chamberlain. He's literally worse than Neville Chamberlain because he's going beyond appeasement. He's just full on enabling what Putin wants to do. He's getting up there on the world stage and blaming Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine for being invaded by Russia. It's disgusting. And people like you are killing us as a country right now. You are shredding all of our credibility on the world stage. All of our allies right now are watching what Donald Trump is doing to Ukraine and asking themselves, can we rely on America ever again? He is destroying all of the decades of goodwill that we have fostered to forge these eminently important alliances with countries all over the world.
How are they important? They have no defense.
To prevent conflicts like World War II from ever happening again. All of these alliances are crumbling under the weight of this inept, corrupt, idiotic president and idiotic voters like you that go along with this crazy shit.
Okay, I just let you talk. Can you let me get it?
Okay,
Can I say a few things, please?
Yes,
okay,
go ahead.
I respect your opinion as always, but I just want to say a few things. So One, the last administration, the administration that you support and think was like one of the greatest administrations ever, had the worst foreign policy of the United States in the 21st century. Look what has happened in 4 years under a Biden foreign policy, under the Biden administration. We have Russia invading Ukraine, and we have Palestine invading Israel in October 7th attacks, the worst attack on Israel in God knows how long. Now, this is what I wanted to say. This is what I've been trying to get out. So you guys on the left do not seem to understand the bigger picture. We have a war that is forthcoming and that is imminent with China. Our biggest adversary on this planet is China, and will always be China. Now, the worst thing you can do is sit there provoking the Russian bear by funneling money into Ukraine and pissing off Russia. When the time comes that we have a war, when China invades Taiwan and we can no longer get these chips out that make everything, phones, cars, fighter jets, everything. When that happens, we're going to have to go to war for it. And the worst thing that could happen is we go to war with China, and then all of a sudden Russia forms a new age Axis powers with China. The best thing that we can do for the stability of the world and to ensure our safety as a country is, just like we did in World War II, we have to be able to ally, even if they're terrible dictators like Putin. The number one enemy is China, and people on the left just don't seem to understand the bigger picture. Russia is not the enemy. This isn't the 1970s. The new enemy is China.
You think that if China and the United States were to go to war, that Russia would side with the United States? That's what you're saying?
Well, they did in World War II, didn't they?
I'm not talking about World War II. I'm talking about right now. You're telling me that if the United States got into a hot kinetic war with China, that Russia would align themselves with the United States and fight alongside United States soldiers to defeat China?
I think now that Trump is president and he's been opening up
you're
negotiation
insane.
lines.
You're fucking insane. You're insane.
I'm not insane.
You're insane. And your own logic fails you. You're talking about this forthcoming inevitable war with China. At the same time, you're advocating for Donald Trump picking a fight with our NATO partners, embracing tyrants like Vladimir Putin, while simultaneously full on throat cocking him way further than embracing him. He is full on throat cocking Vladimir Putin right now and giving Vladimir Putin a complete pass for his belligerent, violent hostility in Ukraine. More than that, blaming Ukraine for it. You say that this war with China is coming, but you support a guy who is doing everything in his power to alienate the United States from our traditional international partners that we've had for the last several decades. Your logic makes no sense. And for whatever reason, you think in this new era, Vladimir Putin would come to the United States rescue and fight alongside us against China? Where do you get this?
He's on the border with China. It's in his best interest to ally with the strongest military nation on planet Earth, which is us. There's also disputed land in northern China that was originally Russia's that they are looking to get back. And the only way they can get that back is if they ally with us in the upcoming war. And I think that having a open line to Vladimir Putin and reestablishing, trade with them and bringing them back into the fold of our trade, and as well as having our European partners and allies increasing their defense budget is in the best interest of the United States. So when you have JD Vance going over there,
we've already tried this, bro. We've already tried to reset our relationship with Russia. These people Vladimir Putin very specifically is not interested in getting in bed with the United States. Vladimir Putin is interested in one thing. Do you know what that is? He by the way, he comes out and just says this. You know what his main goal is?
I know what you're going to say, but it's not true.
He wants to reestablish the Soviet Union. What do you mean it's not true?
He doesn't. He does not.
So he's just saying it just to be funny, or what?
Hutch, they have the same GDP as the state of Florida. They're not in any position to.
Is he joking when he says he thinks that the biggest tragedy of the 20th century was the dissolution of the Soviet Union?
No, that's real.
You think he's joking?
No. He's former KGB. Of course, he's speaking the truth there, but he understands the state of the current Russian Federation, that they're in no position to reestablish the USSR.
He's not thinking about. He's thinking. Vladimir Putin plays the long game, bro. It's not like he wanted to do everything at once. He took things piece by piece. He took Georgia, part of Georgia in when, 2004?
Under Obama.
No, it was under George W. Bush. Hold on.
No, it was every single time he's done land grabs, it's been under a Democrat administration.
August 2008. August 2008. Do you know who was president in August 2008?
Is that going to be George Bush?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what was the next one? It was
Crimea, I think.
Crimea. Yeah.
I feel like I feel like we're veering away from it. Like, I wanted to ask you about Elon Musk. Personally, I think what you're doing, what you're doing is like so beyond shameful to me. Blaming.
Oh, come on, dude.
No, I'm not kidding. People like you, what you're doing is like, it makes me like ashamed and embarrassed that so many of you,
America first.
Well, you guys are going about it in a really backwards way, because what you're doing right now is hurting us. You understand? Like, your full-on embrace of Vladimir Putin is so disgusting to me.
No, I'm just thinking bigger picture. That's all. I think when the war comes, our biggest ally on that side of the world is going to be Russia. It's going to be Russia. It's going to be Japan. Why would you Why would you prioritize a military strategic partnership with Russia over like NATO and the EU? Because first of all, Europe is lost. They literally are. They're so ass backwards in 2025. They, once again, going back to what I was saying, they spend 2% of their GDP on defense. They have no military. You know, England only has 70,000
Why do you keep saying that they have no military? The EU. Hold on.
England has 70,000 troops, Hutch. That's literally one of our national guards of one of our states. They have no military. There's nobody that's going to come to our defense.
There are 2 million. There are 2 million people serving in the EU, like armed services, defense forces of the European Union.
Right. That's combined. That's the whole entire European Union.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
I mean, how many people? Just because I'm curious, how many people are in the United States military? I don't even know the number, but
I think it's similar. How many people serving the U.S. military? 1.3 million.
Okay. But I mean, regardless, they're gonna have to increase their GDP when inevitably something happens with China. Like we need partners. Like we need defense partners.
We have partners. We have them.
Hutch,
you keep claiming that they're doing.
2% is not enough.
You keep claiming that they're doing. You just told me a moment ago they don't even have a military and they have more people collectively than we do. Do you realize what can we just backtrack? Like, that was a crazy, insanely wrong thing that you just said. You acknowledge that, right?
Okay, the numbers were off, but the premise
wildly
of them
off.
having to
your premise is shattered. No. You said we're doing all the protecting for them, and they don't even have a military themselves, and they have 2 million people serving in the armed forces.
So, do you think that they don't have to increase their defense budget? Do you think 2% is fine?
2% was what Donald Trump was asking for back in 2017. By the way, he was asking for 2%.
And now we're asking for 5%. That was before Russia invaded.
Is it going to be 20%? Is it going to be 20% in 4 years?
No, it's not. We're just asking them to come up to the standard of the United States, because we can't be their sole protector.
We're not their sole protector.
Hold on. And first of all,
we're not their sole protector. We are not their.
Hold on. In 2025, wars are not fought with boots on the ground anymore. Okay. Like, wars are fought with high technology, jets, anti-air defense systems, like really high tech things. And the only way you can pay for those things and research things is to increase your defense budget. Wars are not fought with boots on the ground anymore. Which
they did. Many of these countries did increase their budgets, their defense budgets, after Trump asked them to back in 2017. And now you're asking them to do like double or triple that. It's just, Donald Trump treats NATO and our partnership with the European Union like a racketeering, like he treats it like a mafia, like racketeering operation.
Well, no, he doesn't. He asks them to pay their fair share. No, he asks them to pay their fair share, which historically they have not paid their fair share.
Why does he say shit? Why does he say shit like NATO is obsolete?
They are obsolete. They're literally nothing. They're so unintimidating, and you act like, okay, so you said 2 million soldiers across the European Union.
Why haven't we had a major like World War II at like level war since World War II?
Well, I think it's because of the creation of the nuclear weapons.
Also,
I mean, it's not NATO. It's you act like a war would just pop. Hold on. You
act
like a war would just pop off.
Real quick. Why didn't? So if it's not NATO, then why did Russia give a f if Ukraine wanted to join NATO? It's nothing. It's obsolete.
NATO is supposed to be a defensive organization.
They are a defensive organization.
When it expands its borders, all the way to Ukraine on the Russian border, that is offensive in nature.
When you say expands their borders, what do you mean?
Well, they've given membership to like what? Like literally.
And what does it take to be given
different countries?
What does it take to be given membership to NATO?
I don't know, but I know you're invited to NATO and you accept the membership. I mean, what? It's like Finland, Sweden, like they were not originally part of NATO.
You have to ask to join NATO. NATO doesn't expand. Countries ask to join NATO, and then the NATO members vote about whether or not they're going to allow those countries in. But I want to go back. You just said NATO was obsolete. So why would Russia care if Ukraine joined NATO?
Because that means that NATO military systems would be on the Russian border.
So they're obsolete. You just said they're obsolete.
Look what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
But who cares? Like, what would the risk be?
The risk would be that we're on their border with military systems. And first of all,
who cares? You just said NATO was obsolete. Who gives a fuck?
No, we are a part of NATO. If we were not a part of NATO, NATO would be obsolete. That's what I meant. So
they would be far less off, but they would not be obsolete.
They would be so far off. They wouldn't. They literally. I mean, they probably could fight a war with Russia.
I just feel like you're not answering my question, because you can't tell me that NATO is obsolete and it doesn't accomplish anything. It doesn't prevent anything from happening or whatever, and then tell me that Russia was justified in being afraid of Ukraine being a part of NATO. It doesn't make it. That's a nonsensical thing that you're saying right there. It doesn't make any sense. If it's obsolete, then why? Who gives a f- NATO or Ukraine joins? Let me ask you this: do you think there was a risk to Russia that NATO would invade Russia preemptively?
I don't know about that.
Okay. So the answer is
I don't know.
No.
I don't know. No, we both don't know the answer to that.
Has NATO ever invaded a country just offensively with no like provocation or anything?
Well, didn't we do that with like Mogadishu in the 90s?
That wasn't NATO.
I mean, wasn't that like a joint operation with like
the UN?
Wasn't England
that wasn't NATO.
I mean, but it's a joint operation with members of NATO.
With members of NATO, but that was a UN operation, as far as I know. NATO had nothing to do with Somalia.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless, you said have they invaded? I mean, Mogadishu was a joint operation with members of NATO. So regardless
why do you keep saying that? I'm trying to get you to acknowledge that NATO doesn't like invade countries. They're not out there trying to conquer countries and annex region and forcefully like absorb people into NATO. Russia is doing that with Ukraine. They're saying you don't have a choice. That's our land. We're going to take it through force with violence and kill tens of thousands of people and literally kidnap like 40,000 kids and take them back to Russia. And you're over here like, well, what choice did he have? I think it's disgraceful. I think it's disgraceful that people like you in this country co-sign on stuff like that. That's insane to me.
I think it's cute how you don't have any criticism for the last administration's failed foreign policy that allowed it to happen.
What you're calling failed foreign policy is, number one, Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. That's somehow a foreign policy blunder for Biden. I find that quite odd. And number two, you're blaming Biden for Hamas's actions on October 7th. Those are not United States foreign policy blunders. I have issues with the way that Biden handled the Israel stuff, and that's like fair criticism there. But with respect to Ukraine, that was incredibly strong foreign policy. That was easily Joe Biden's biggest foreign policy win, was helping to marshal international support for Ukraine and giving them the tools to be able to repel an invasion from a country that's 10 times the size of them, that has a much more dominant military. I guarantee you that Vladimir Putin obviously wanted Donald Trump to win, because Donald Trump was running on a platform of let's stop giving aid to Ukraine, and it looks like he's trying to execute on that right now.
So,
and the fact that supporters like you see that as strength is what's like hurting our country right now.
So two things. Do you think that the leader of the United States, the president of the United States, when this war was going on, should have been communicating to Putin to find a resolution to end the war? Do you think it was Joe Biden's job?
They knew for months. They were watching Russia build up forces alongside the border with Ukraine. And they did everything in their power to warn Ukraine of this imminent invasion. They weren't going to stop Russia from making that decision. Unless, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Should we have sent American troops on the ground to stop that from happening? Or what do you think they should have done? Should we maybe drop a tactical nuke along the border or what?
No, I mean, it's so simple. Literally, all you have to say is that NATO will never be admitted into, Ukraine will never be admitted into NATO.
Why would you? So you're just forcing a concession. Like at that point, at that point, I feel like you would just accelerate the full-on annexation of Ukraine. Because if you're telling Vladimir Putin like they will never join NATO ever, then why wouldn't Vladimir Putin just like accelerate the timeline? Great, we're just going to take it. There's no risk. You're taking away all the leverage from the negotiations at that point.
So once again, let me just ask, you didn't answer my original question. I said, do you think it was Joe Biden's job to reach out to Putin to find a resolution to end the war?
They literally, they did have proxies. They didn't. You are 1,000. You are 1,000%. Bro.
Okay. Well, you're wrong because you know about the Tucker Carlson Vladimir Putin interview. You know what Putin said whenever they did that interview? He hadn't talked to Joe Biden in over 2 years.
They have proxies. You understand that? They have proxies at the State Department that communicate with proxies at the Kremlin. You understand that this is like normal diplomacy. Just because Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin didn't have a personal conversation does not mean that there were not representatives from the United States having conversations with Russia and telling them, we can see what you're doing. We're looking at your buildup along the border. We have intelligence sources inside your government confirming what your plans are. And then what did the Biden administration do in the weeks preceding the invasion? They told the world, they got out in front of it and they said, look, we have a high degree of confidence that Russia is going to try to do some kind of false flag operation in the next few days to justify the invasion. The invasion is imminent. We expect it to happen in the next week. They were sending envoys into Ukraine to counsel Volodymyr Zelensky to tell him they are going to invade you. You need to be prepared right now.
And he couldn't stop it, though. He didn't stop it and couldn't stop it.
What are you suggesting that they would have? What are you suggesting that they should have done?
Say that NATO would never be admitted into, or Ukraine would never be admitted into NATO.
So just give Russia exactly what it wants.
Nope.
That's your solution.
They would not have invaded.
That's your solution. Putin. Hey, listen, Vladimir Putin, listen, okay? We want to negotiate with you, okay? Here's what we're going to do, okay? We're going to tell Ukraine they can never join international organization of countries that would protect them from invasion in the future. Just a preemptive, here's everything you could have ever wanted. And that would have stopped the invasion in your mind?
Vladimir Putin was on TV giving press conferences months and months before the invasion, saying that the admittance of Ukraine into NATO was unacceptable and he wouldn't stand for it. And the original mission of NATO was to not expand all the way to Ukraine, to Russia's borders. That was the deal that we made.
We never agreed to that. No, you're wrong.
Why are you saying we never agreed to that?
Because we never agreed to that. We never agreed to it. We never signed any formal treaty that NATO would not expand any further to the east.
Hutch, the most well-known scholars on this subject all say the original agreement with Russia after the fall of USSR that NATO's borders would not expand to Ukraine or onto Russia's borders. That was the original agreement, and the people that have studied the subject the most all are in agreement that was the original mission and statement of NATO, that we wouldn't expand that far. And you had Vladimir Putin saying...
No, it's just not true.
I mean, it is true. If you listen to any scholar on the subject, they will tell you that was the original.
I have.
Okay.
I have. Yes, I do.
Then you know that that's the case.
It's not the case. Okay. Show me the agreement. Pull it up.
I mean, I'll post it in the Discord.
No. Show me the signed agreement. Show me the signed declaration of intent. Show me the signed agreement that NATO made that they would never expand eastward.
Mm-hmm.
Pull it up.
I will. Let me sit back down.
Google it. Tell me what you find.
I'm Googling it.
I'll tell you what agreement we did do in the late 90s. We agreed with Ukraine that if they were to voluntarily give up their enriched uranium, their nuclear weapon stockpile, that we gave them security assurances. And we said, you know, like in exchange for you getting rid of your nukes, we will provide security for you in the case that Russia were to invade. Are you aware of that?
So what I'm saying is James Baker in 1990 told Soviet leader Gorbachev that NATO would not expand 1 inch eastward.
That's not the same thing as a formal agreement.
Okay,
you understand
it's
that?
an agreement, though. I mean, so are you saying that there's no legitimacy towards like a handshake agreement, like the word of NATO?
No, there's not. Of course, there's. What do you mean?
So we're just not honoring our word as a defense alliance. We're just giving false promises.
Are you implying that like in formal negotiations, like formal negotiation processes, and maybe certain assurances that are given in that kind of a context is on the same level as like a formal agreement? It's just,
well, I would say that a handshake deal, you know, obviously it's not written in stone, like, you know, like an actual written thing, but it's still, we gave them our word that we wouldn't expand eastward. 1 inch eastward was the quote from James Baker.
Has it occurred to you that Vladimir Putin is not an honest guy? Has it occurred to you that he's just lying when he says that he went into Ukraine because of a threat from NATO? Has that crossed your mind a single time that this ex-KGB guy who has found a way to hold on to power for like the last 25 years, who has no interest in relinquishing that power, who has shown a willingness to invade sovereign countries over and over and over and over again in the 21st century? Has it occurred to you that he is lying to you and you're just parroting actual Kremlin propaganda?
Well, no, I just, once again, go back to what I was saying. I think that the bigger issue on hand and our main adversary is China. I honestly, like, you know, you give Donbass to Russia for like, let's say an actual agreement that if we ever went to war with China, would you say that's a fair deal? That they would go to war with us if we gave them Donbass?
It's not going to happen, dude. It's just, that's not going to.
You're
making up this thing where it's like, Donald Trump hasn't even talked about this like hypothetical situation. You're acting as though like, well, you know, it's like, it's a transactional thing, right? You know, we give them parts of Ukraine and then they agree to help us with China. Nobody is talking about Russia fighting alongside the United States against a potential war from China.
Think that Marco Rubio is talking about that behind closed doors with Russian officials? You really don't think that they're... I mean, of course they are.
Will you just
such high levels?
Can I just get you to condemn Vladimir Putin for what he did?
Yeah, no, I in no way praise Vladimir Putin. I think it was messed up.
I want you to go further than that and like fully condemn what he did.
So I will condemn it, but I won't say that it was unprovoked. That's all I'll say. Like I condemn it. I think invading a sovereign nation like what he did is terrible, but I can't say that he was unprovoked.
What was the provocation?
NATO expanding their borders to Ukraine.
Do you think there was do you think there was a risk of NATO invading Russia?
No, that's not the point, though. NATO.
What do you mean it's not the point? That's the nature of the threat. If NATO is a defensive organization, right? There's no.
This is. Hold on.
Can you give me a single time of NATO like doing an unprovoked like offensive military action?
No, first
because
of all,
it's never happened. It's never because it's never.
I mean, I can. I mean, them expanding their borders and admitting people in the Slavic region,
bro. That is not.
That is offensive by definition. You're moving towards the enemy. You're moving towards the enemy in an offensive position, admitting countries.
Why can't you just acknowledge that there was a 0% chance of NATO invading preemptively Russia in an act of conquest? Why can't you just say, like, of course, that wasn't going to happen?
Okay, no, they weren't going to invade Russia, but you know what would happen?
Okay.
We would have nuclear weapons on the border of Russia.
And?
What would happen?
And?
What do you mean, and?
Do you think that NATO would just preemptively nuclear strike Russia?
That's not the point. The whole.
What do you mean it's not the point? We're evaluating the threat. What is the threat?
Nuclear weapons on Russia's border is the threat. You have to look at it through their lens, Hutch. Why did Sweden
and Finland request to join NATO? Why do you think?
Because obviously they were nervous about a Russian invasion.
Okay, would you call that offensive? Would you call that a NATO offensive?
I think them admitting it and expanding the borders towards Russia is offensive by nature.
You just told me a moment ago that the reason why Finland and Sweden requested to join NATO is because they were afraid of Russia invading them.
I mean, that I'm doing air quotes, like they're nervous about Russia. I mean,
you don't think that they had a good reason?
Russia would invade Sweden?
You don't think that you don't think that there was any risk of Vladimir Putin having further aspirational goals in terms of like conquest after what he's been doing?
Absolutely not. Zero.
He just did it once with Ukraine and got it out of his system. And you don't think it's a rational like thought for Sweden to have like it's possible he could possibly like target some of us next.
Of course they're gonna think about it, but if you were the prime minister of Sweden,
would you not assess that to be a risk?
Well, hold on, and let's just know this goes back to what I was saying as well. Like they probably, if you look up Sweden's defense budget, I guarantee it's so low. I guarantee they have no defense. Sweden.
Okay.
So, but I think that the chances of Russia invading Sweden was literally probably zero. As close to zero as you could get it.
Why are you acting so incredulous when we know Vladimir Putin has invaded sovereign countries multiple times in the 21st century?
When you say sovereign countries, we're not talking about like
Georgia,
like European
Ukraine.
Power. Georgia, right?
And
we're
Ukraine.
talking about Georgia. This isn't Poland. This isn't Poland or Sweden. Okay, Ukraine.
That's two. So why stop? So why stop at two? Why wouldn't it be three?
Because they're in no position to invade an actual European power like Poland, like any of these countries. They're in no position.
So you think
they have the GDP of Florida?
So you think that it was a rational fear for Vladimir Putin to have of NATO that they could preemptively strike Russia, but it's an irrational fear for Sweden to want to join NATO for fear that Vladimir Putin would try to take territories, even though he's done so multiple times in the 21st century? How do you explain this logic?
Because countries have a sphere of influence, okay? Obviously, you know our sphere of influence. It's going to be Canada. It's going to be Mexico. It's going to be the
worldwide,
Caribbean.
baby. We're worldwide.
Well, we are at this point. We're worldwide, and that's
entire
also
globe.
Part of the movement.
Yeah,
that's also part of the movement is that we are America first. We shouldn't be intervening. Just had the same thought process that FDR had about not sending our boys to war. That was his whole campaign slogan. You know, like now we're literally getting our fingers and dipping our toes in every single part of the world when that shouldn't be the case. Once again, we're $36 trillion in debt. We have so many issues in our country. We have an open border. The Biden administration let in literally 20 million illegal immigrants into our country.
It's just funny that you talk about like the looming threat of China at the same time proposing an isolationist foreign policy. Like, what do you think is going to happen in a multipolar world? We have strategic military partnerships with over 100 countries in the entire world. We have military bases all over the world, with countries that want us to be there, that enjoy their partnership with us. You mentioned Somalia a moment ago. Somalia loves having the United States military there to help them with drone strikes with like Al-Shabaab and other terrorist cells. What do you think is going to happen if we just like close up shop all over the world? Who do you think is going to come in to fill that vacuum?
Do you know why they love having us? Because they don't have to spend any money on defense like they've historically done, and they can just focus their money and their finances on improving their country.
But what do you think is going to? Who do you think is going to fill that vacuum if we withdraw from all of these places all over the world? Which is what you're suggesting.
The European Union should be filling that vacuum.
But who do you think is actually going to fill the like a lot of these? Can I give you a hint?
Go ahead. I mean, give me a region, give me a country, give me a region and a country.
It's blowing my mind that you can't even think of like who I'm thinking of right now. Who is a major competitor with the United States at the current moment?
So you think that China is going to take over our military bases and
yes!
Oh my gosh.
Yes!
No shot.
You don't. Okay, so if we pull out of like, let's just take one country for example. If we pull out of like Nigeria, right? You know, we just give up all of our like.
They're already buying up all Africa.
I don't know if we have any military bases in Nigeria, but let's just assume we do for the sake of the conversation. We just close up shop, you know, and we leave. You don't think China is going to come in there and fill that role and try to foster goodwill with these countries and then leverage that over decades to make themselves the dominant superpower in the entire world? They're already trying to do this. They already tried to fill vacuums all over like USAID is the perfect example. Like China is already chomping at the bit right now to fill in those gaps, to come in and fill in the gaps left with shuttering USAID programs in regions like Africa. Like there's already reporting on this, that China's just like, this is incredible.
So China has been, I mean, what they've been doing in Africa for like 30 years now is like they come into these poor countries, give them a loan, the countries can't pay the loan back, and then they I don't know what they do, but like they take, they get rights to a certain part of the country to do whatever the hell they want, to build military bases, to do whatever they want. They're already taking over Africa. I mean, there's literally nothing we can do about it. Us having a military base in Africa, in Nigeria, is not going to deter China from, setting up shop in a neighboring country. What are we going to do? We're going to go to war with China over Nigeria?
The United States has strategic military and trade partnerships with several major African countries that are growing economies. These are economies that are like these are developing nations and growing economies. The benefits of those kinds of relationships are vast. You understand this? Like having the benefit of having goodwill with these countries benefits us directly. So the value of the US dollar and the value of like American global hegemony.
You act like any of these countries in Africa that we are supposedly trade partners with, like if we drop them tomorrow, like it would have any effect on our U.S. economy.
Maybe it wouldn't tomorrow, but if we start pulling back from our role as the superpower right now, if we start withdrawing and if we start taking this isolationist posture, it will create a massive power vacuum. And it won't just be countries like China that come in to fill these gaps. It will be countries like North Korea. It will be countries like Iran. It will be countries like Russia. How does that make us safer, more secure, more prosperous 30 years from now? You seem to be advocating for a multipolar world, while at the same time, talking about this dire warning of a looming threat from China. It just seems kind of incoherent to me. Like, if you really think that there's this looming threat of a war with China, I don't know why you'd be advocating for decisions that make us weaker on the world stage. It makes no sense to me.
I don't know how asking our allies to increase their defense budget and to pay their fair share makes us like a laughing stock on the world stage. Like we are literally asking
what makes us a laughing stock is Donald Trump personally, but what I wouldn't even use that phrase. It just makes us weaker. When we weaken our partnerships, when we weaken our alliances, we may not feel the immediate effects of that weakening, but if some major conflict were to arise 20 years from now, how are any of these countries going to take us at our word that we're going to fulfill our security obligations when we renege on our agreement that we made with Ukraine, for example? Like, why would any country agree to denuclearize in the future if they know that the United States 20 years from now is just going to elect a idiot like Donald Trump, who is going to abandon our partners when they need us the most?
I don't know why. Like, listen, I can understand not agreeing with policies and all that stuff, but you calling him an idiot, first of all, he's not an idiot. Like, this guy has a long track record. But hold on, and let me finish.
I'm so angry with people like you, man.
We just elected a geriatric patient. The guy was literally unable to get a sentence out the whole 4 years.
And yet he was competent enough to get way more legislation than Donald Trump was able to, with way slimmer margins in Congress. Donald Trump, what did he get done in Congress in terms of major pieces of legislation in his first term? He got the tax cuts. He got the tax cuts. That's it. That old, incompetent, geriatric Joe Biden got like a dozen pieces of legislation.
What about interest rates being literally 1/4%?
You're crediting.
What about energy prices being an all-time low?
Bro. Do you think it's something to brag about, like gas prices in 2020? Do you think that Donald Trump was responsible for bringing gas prices down in 2020?
Absolutely. Cut regulation. For example, you had Joe Biden not allowing people to frack on government land.
Can you think of anything else that was going on in 2020?
What, you're talking about COVID?
Yeah, I'm talking about COVID. Exactly. Good. And then
hold on.
So COVID had what kind of impact on the oil market?
Obviously, every single market took a hit.
No, but particularly oil, right? Like, What did COVID do to the oil markets?
I mean, I'm assuming it took a hit, like gas prices
Take a
went
hit,
up, like
bro. It was negative. The prices were negative at one point. That means the oil companies were paying people to take their inventory. That's how bad it was.
Okay.
When you introduce a global pandemic that results in people spending way more time indoors, what happens to the demand of oil? It plummets off of a cliff. And you get things like, oh my God, I went to the gas station and it's like 89 cents a barrel. That's not because Donald Trump's energy policies. That's because COVID tanked our global oil markets.
Yes, and also, but that goes back to what we were talking about with the Canada-Mexico trade agreement. Like, we're in a different state in the economy. Like, obviously, we do need to renegotiate the original, agreement that we had in 2019. Like, I always see you on Twitter.
You haven't explained that at all.
But I always see you on Twitter, like, talking about how, Donald Trump was the guy who negotiated the original agreement with Canada and Mexico. Like,
he says we're being ripped off. Like, I don't understand. Like, he says we're being ripped off by his own deal. That's right. That's nonsensical. You wonder why I call him an idiot. Do you think that windmills cause cancer?
I don't think windmills cause cancer, but I think
why does he think that?
Stupid form of energy.
Why did Donald Trump?
First of all, I don't think he's ever said, and even if he did, he'd
really?
be probably joking.
Really?
Well, you know what he does say.
Hold on, I'm gonna pull. Hold on, I'm gonna pull something up.
Well, I mean, dude, just
pull up the stream. Pull up the stream. Pull up the stream. Pull up the stream. And tell me if you think he's joking.
God. I mean, dude, him saying that windmills cause cancer is just like, it's like a meme, dude. He's literally memeing.
Okay, I'm just gonna put this clip up, and you can watch it with me, right? Pull up the stream.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
And tell me if you detect sarcasm here.
I mean, what year was this?
So we've ended.
This is a while ago.
5 years ago.
The war on American energy. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world, and that all happened over the last 2 years. Big difference. Hillary wanted to put up wind. If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value. And they say the noise causes cancer. You told me that one, okay? You know, the thing makes it so... And, of course, it's like a graveyard for birds. If you love birds, you'd never want to walk under a windmill because it's...
You understand that this is a thing that Trump has been claiming for...
Dude, he's literally memeing. You just watched him meme. Like, it's obviously... He says that they're saying noise causes cancer.
You don't understand the context here. He is being 1,000% serious there. You understand that he has a years-long documented history of claiming that windmills cause cancer. He is not joking. It's not a joke.
Okay. Well, hold on.
Do you agree that? Hold on, real quick. Do you agree with Donald Trump that there's a risk with solar energy that when the sun goes down, all of a sudden, boop, you get no more energy?
No, obviously not. But first of all, I think that there's better forms of energy that we could be looking at, like nuclear. Like, Democrats are so against nuclear energy, and it's literally the cleanest form of energy that we have.
First of all, I'm not opposed to nuclear energy. In fact, I think you can find a lot of Democrats that are completely in support of nuclear energy. But second of all, that's what Donald Trump said about solar energy. He said that the technology is useless because you don't have power when the sun goes down. He doesn't seem to grasp the concept of batteries. Of storing energy.
Regardless, they're not a good
That's why I call him an idiot.
The whole point is that it's not a good form of energy.
What do you mean it's not a good form? Solar? Do you realize how cheap solar has gotten in the last 20 years? Do you realize how efficient solar is?
If it's so efficient and it's so cost effective, then why hasn't it had wide grown adoption?
It has. What do you mean? The solar industry has exploded. Bro, the solar industry has exploded in the last 10 years. Do you realize it got so much cheaper to manufacture the products that you need to harness this energy? And it has exploded all over. My dad, MAGA, super Republican guy, had Tesla solar panels on his house, along with millions of other Americans. I don't know how you could be ignorant to the fact that solar energy has exploded in the United States.
I'm not saying solar is not, like solar is better than wind. And I've heard, I don't know if you've heard it, but Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan some years back saying that if you built like, I don't know, like a huge solar farm in Nevada over like 500 miles, that it could power the whole United States, and I take Elon's word on that. So obviously there's some, there's ways that we can look at it that are probably efficient.
And why did you just say it was a bad form of energy a moment ago?
I just don't think it's as effective as like something like nuclear energy. And I think that there's other forms of energy that would be better than solar energy. That's all. And also, isn't it like, isn't it susceptible to cyber attacks? I mean, solar farms, like wouldn't it be susceptible to cyber attacks?
The current energy infrastructure is susceptible to cyber attacks too. You're aware of that, right? Like it's not just, we have like these big power plants or whatever, that we have computers that govern these systems, right? And that's been a serious security concern, like many times over. We hear reports every 2 years about how like Chinese like infiltrated our power grid or whatever. Like they're already susceptible to cyber attack. You need computers to govern these systems,
So the one thing I will say though is like we have the most oil in the world. So like why would we want to promote another form of energy when the thing that makes us so rich is oil, which we have the most of in the whole entire world? Like why would we move away from oil when we have so much of it?
Well, I think a lot of people would argue that the impact on climate is something that can't be ignored.
And I would say, well,
and renewable energy is becoming so efficient and so profitable that you can still generate prosperity while pursuing an agenda of renewable energy. That was the whole purpose of the IRA. Create, tens of thousands
ruffle the feathers of chat, but I think that global warming is fake, and I've looked at evidence of it, and we've been warming, the Earth has been warming at the same rate for over 2 million years. We can stick a pole in the ground and know what the temperature of Earth was 2 million years ago, and we've been warming at the exact same rate for over 2 million years now. So that's I encourage people to look up the numbers. We are not in a global warming period. People think we're actually in a global cooling period. So that
wait, hold on. I want you to Google the average temperature of the United States over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. The Earth has gotten progressively hotter every single year.
It is cyclical, but the rate at which it is warming right now is unprecedented in the entire Earth's history, I believe.
Well, we know what the temperature of the Earth was 2 million years ago.
Since we reached a certain equilibrium.
And you also know that
wait. You just said we're in a global. No, you just said we're in a global cooling period right now. Did you Google what the average temperature of the Earth has been over the years for the last 20 years?
I can go. I've looked at the research. I've looked at the information. We are literally. I think we're cooling at like a 0.01% more than what we traditionally are. Like it's such a minuscule amount that it's not even recognizable.
You think that we're cool? Like we're getting cooler year over year?
No. We're warming at the exact same rate that we've been warming over millions of years.
You understand?
Which is why the science community is split 50-50 on this issue.
It is not split. Who
it
told
is.
you? Who?
It is.
Brother, do you understand that there is overwhelming consensus at this point? You don't even hear Republicans dispute it that much anymore. When I was growing up, you're about 20 years behind. The Republicans in Congress were saying the things that you're saying now. I don't really think that's true. Everything's, it's all cyclical, blah, 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 blah. Now, basically like 90% of Republicans serving in Congress, what they say now is, well, yes, global warming is happening. And yes, what human beings are doing is contributing to that. But I think what you're proposing goes too far, and we're ceding too much ground to China and India, who should be doing more to take care of climate change themselves. Like traditional Republicans have abandoned your line here, which is like, it's just not happening. There's overwhelming consensus. Whoever told you it's 50-50, I don't know where you get your information from, but I'm telling you, like, people like you are like killing us as a species and as a country. And I just think you're horrible.
Well, I mean, thankfully I'm not in charge of, environmental
protection. But people like you vote. I don't think you deserve rights.
Okay. You don't think we deserve rights? I would say that I'm more informed than probably 99% of the electorate that literally just votes at the price of eggs.
I wish I could send you to a re-education camp. It would be really cushy. You would be cared for. You would get 3 meals a day. You would be allowed visitors on Sunday. You could get 1 nightly phone call. But yeah, strap you to a gurney, keep your eyes propped open with eye drops, and do that thing.
As long as I can watch your stream in re-education camp, then I'm cool with that. That's fine.
Why are you hurting? Why are you hurting us?
What?
Why do you hurt us?
I'm not hurting us, bro.
Yes, you are.
People differing opinions are the whole point of our democracy.
No, you vote,
we have
though.
different opinions.
No, but you vote, and the people that you're voting for are hurting us.
Hutch, there's a few things that I care about when I vote. One, lower taxes. Okay, we already have a history of Trump tax cuts, which benefited.
Did your taxes go up when Biden was president?
I believe. Well, they did inadvertently with inflation. 7% inflation. What do you mean? Well, I was paying my dollar lost value every single year under Biden.
Do you think that if Trump was president in 2022, we wouldn't have experienced inflation?
I don't know. You guys stole the election.
You don't believe that?
Oh, of course I do. What do you mean? You guys absolutely did. The man's up 100,000 votes in Pennsylvania, and then at 4 a.m., 110,000 votes come in, every single one for Biden. You don't think that there was any funny business with the drop boxes going on in the ballot harvesting?
You're trolling me. Stop. You're trolling me.
Bro, the state that you live in, you can't show ID to vote, Hutch. That is the most un-American thing I've ever heard in my life. Which is why.
No, you're trolling.
What do you mean? There's no voter ID in California. It's illegal to ask for it.
There's no voter ID. There's no voter ID in I think most states, bro.
Yeah. Do you think that's not a problem? Do you think that people shouldn't?
No, of course I don't.
What? You have to show ID to buy alcohol.
You know what? What I want you guys to do is to demonstrate what the problem is. And so far, you have never demonstrated that our election systems are not secure.
Mm-hmm.
You have never once demonstrated it. You do this stuff
because in 2000 it went to the Supreme Court with George Bush.
Had nothing to do with the integrity of our. Well, actually, no. Part of that was like hanging chads and stuff like that. But voter ID was not a salient issue back then. But if you're going to make a claim that there's all this fraudulent voting, I just wonder why, when Donald Trump had literal dozens of opportunities to present this evidence in courts all over the country in 2020, they couldn't come up with anything.
No, that's not true. The courts wouldn't take the case. The courts wouldn't take the case.
Why didn't the courts take the case?
Because most of these judges were compromised, of course.
What do you mean? There were several judges that were appointed by Trump. You realize that, right? That throughout these cases, like in order to bring a case, in order to sue the government, you have to have a complainant or a complainant. Is that what you say? Demonstrate harm. Like, I was harmed in this way. In this case, me as a voter, there was a fraud committed against me because there was all this other like fraudulent voting. And in that phase of like the court process is where you present the evidence and you say, this is how I demonstrate harm. I was harmed because all this fraud took place, thus diluting the power of my own vote or negating the power of my own vote. And in every single one of these court cases, essentially he lost every single one except for one. In the entire country, I think the Supreme Court ruled that the Pennsylvania legislature acted improperly with their system, but they never demonstrated any fraud. I do think it's like, if I'm in your shoes and I'm going to be making these claims, like, okay, there's millions of voter fraud every year or whatever, like, it's just interesting to me that you guys don't seem to care that there's no evidence of this.
Okay, well, let me ask you this: why was there more voter turnout in 2020 than there was in 2024?
Why do you think?
I just gave you the reason why I think.
Do you think it's because, number one, a lot more people were staying at home and they were looking at their phones and they were seeing a lot more politics on their feed, and it was during a once in a generation pandemic, so politics was ubiquitous in 2020 and infested everything. You could not escape politics in 2020. It's a little bit better now, but it was all over the place. Number two, they made voting easier because it was a pandemic. A lot of states
they definitely made it easier.
Yes. The difference between people like you and me is I don't think it's a bad thing to make voting easier. I think in a healthy democracy, you don't want a lot of barriers to voting. We don't want to disincentivize people from engaging in the political process. You want to put up all these needless hurdles.
You think that nobody should show ID when they vote?
I don't think that you have demonstrated that there's a risk right now. Because how it works for me is I get mailed a ballot, and then I fill out that ballot, and then I mail it back. And I've never had any problems with the system. And no Republican slate of judges in any state in the country has ever been able to demonstrate that mail-in voting caused massive amounts of fraud, or that illegal immigrants are voting in by the millions. You make these wild claims, and there's no onus on you guys to present any kind of evidence to back it up. And then you appeal to stuff like common sense. You're like, well, just use your brain, bro. No, it doesn't work like that. If you're going to make a claim like that, I need a little bit of evidence, like something to go off of.
Okay, I'll give you another one. So we'll step away from the fraudulent ballots and the ballot harvesting and drop boxes.
What do you think ballot harvesting is, by the way?
Hold on, but no.
What do you?
Two things. No. Two things. I just let you talk. Have you ever seen 2,000 Mules by Dinesh D'Souza? Have you ever seen that documentary?
Do you know that he apologized for that?
What do you mean he apologized? Because
literally
sued.
He got sued, and he literally apologized for being wildly wrong. Do you realize that? That was like a month ago or 2 months ago. Literally Google it right now. Hold on. Stop. I want you to Google it. Dinesh D'Souza apologizes for 2,000 Mules.
I'm about to give you another example, though.
No, but tell me when you've Googled it and tell me what you see. Read it out to me.
Apologizes to a man falsely accused of ballot fraud in the film. A man, a single individual.
What did he apologize for?
One individual.
What did he apologize for? What did he apologize for?
For inaccurate information towards one individual in the film. I mean, it's one individual. It's just the state of Georgia.
That's your idea of trustworthy. So you think that's a valid source? Somebody who was sued and had to apologize to a man in court, and you think that guy's like a good source to go to for information?
Well, do you think that one person was the person that shaped the election? Like, do you think that this one guy was the tipping point? Of course not. It was in multiple different states.
I think when you lie and you're so reckless in your filmmaking or whatever, that you would just blatantly lie about something like that, I think it damages your credibility a little. Don't you?
I think it's ignorant to think that there was a zero funny business in the 2020 election.
What is your evidence?
I think it's ignorant to think there was.
What's your evidence?
You have our current attorney general bringing it to the Supreme Court. You're going to say that Pam Bondi's stupid? Of course not.
What is Pam Bondi doing?
She was the one that was representing Trump in the 2020 election fraud case,
and she lost.
But do you think that there wouldn't be like? Do you think she would take the?
Do you understand that she lost?
Like zero
you understand that she lost?
Well, I do. I understand because he's now the president. He wasn't the president in 2020. Okay. But let me just one other thing. So, a poll came out after the 2020 election. Mm-hmm. Obviously you remember the Hunter Biden laptop story. We've talked about this a million times in all political spaces. But a poll came out after that said that the Hunter Biden laptop story, if it was allowed to run and was brought to the public before the election, that it would have swung the election by up to 3 points.
I don't believe it.
It would have changed. Okay, well, you don't have to believe it, but that's like so.
You have
censorship. You have censorship from the left.
Who was president when that happened?
You have censorship from the left.
Who was president?
He's not control. He doesn't have control of these social media companies.
Okay, so at what point? Who do you think was responsible for the decision to, on Twitter's part, it was ban the story for 24 hours, and then after that, it was unbanned.
They banned the New York Post and Facebook. The Facebook censored it. All the top social media companies, and it caused the Streisand effect because everybody was talking about it the next day. Wrong. No. Only the people that had your ears to the ground, not the normal Americans that were voting.
The reason why I don't trust that poll or whatever is because the way they phrase it, it's like it implies that Joe Biden himself was implicated in Hunter Biden's illegality, which was not the case. And that in that New York Post article that got suppressed by Twitter, which I will concede was too far. They shouldn't have done that. Even they concede that was a mistake, seeing that they reversed course in like less than 24 hours. But in that New York Post article, you realize that New York Post article got stuff wrong. Like in that article, they claimed that the Hunter Biden laptop demonstrated that Joe Biden was involved with his son's business dealings. And that just wasn't the case.
Of course he was. Of course he was. You had
Really?
you had the business partner for Hunter Biden going on record in front of Congress saying that the big man was in on the deals. And also,
No, that's not what he said. No, that's not what he said. That is not what he said. That's not what he said. No, I'm not. No, back up.
You literally won't let me finish.
Back up. No,
Okay.
you just made a claim. You said that Hunter Biden's business partner testified that Joe Biden was in on the like business dealings. I watched his testimony. What he said was in the 10 years that he worked with Hunter Biden, he never once ever, not a single time, heard Hunter Biden talking business with his dad.
Okay, yes, but they referred to him as the big man.
Okay, that's this is your evidence?
Okay, well, hold on. I was going to say one more thing. You also have on evidence Joe Biden bragging. He said, I'm getting on this plane in 8 hours. If the prosecutor that's not investigating my son is not fired, you're not getting aid. You know what that is? That's literally treason by definition. You are withholding aid to fire a prosecutor that's looking into his son that sits on the board of Burisma, who doesn't speak Ukrainian, who doesn't know anything about energy, getting paid freaking hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Okay, I mean, if that's not a conflict of interest, then what is?
Do you know what the gang? Do you know what the Gang of Eight is?
I mean, I don't know what the Gang of Eight is. What is that?
The Gang of Eight is like it's like 4 Democrats and four Republicans serving in the Congress. I think it's a mixture of House. Hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. Hold on. What is the Gang of Eight? Is a colloquial term for a set of 8 leaders in the United States Congress who are briefed on classified intelligence matters by the executive branch. Specifically, the Gang of Eight includes leaders of each of the 2 parties from both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Okay. So in 2014, I believe, when Biden went to Ukraine and told them that we're going to withhold funds until you prosecute that or until you'd fire that prosecutor. You know that the Gang of Eight was informed of this, right? They were shown intelligence, and then the Republican side of Congress saw that and approved of what they did, right? Are you aware of that?
Okay, so you're saying that 8 people can speak for the whole will of Congress?
No, it wasn't just them. Are you aware that the EU agreed with the Obama administration that Viktor Shokin, who was this prosecutor, they agreed that he was corrupt?
Of course they did, because
Okay.
I mean, what they're going to go against the United States? The guys that fund them?
Are you aware that the IMF agreed that Viktor Shokin was corrupt and needed to be ousted?
Yeah, of course he was. Yeah, of course he was corrupt. He's looking into Hunter Biden. Of course he's corrupt. I mean, you're just believing it.
Hold on. So I just want to be clear. Your premise right now is that Republican leadership in Congress, the EU, and the IMF all wanted to protect Hunter Biden?
No. Not protect Hunter Biden. Not protect Hunter Biden, especially the EU. What are they going to do? They're going to go against. So if Obama says to them, "Hey, listen, we're not going to, we don't want to do anything here, and we would appreciate it if you just didn't, if you just went along with this." You don't think that they're going to be like, "No, man, like, we want this guy to look into your vice president's son." They have no skin in the game. Why would they ever want that? They don't care about it.
Why did the Republicans in Congress go along with it?
Do not bring Ice Savior into your TV channel.
First of all, Obama's last 2 years were up. I mean, who does it help to prosecute the vice president? I mean,
why? Answer my question. Why did the Republicans in Congress agree with Obama that Viktor Shokin was corrupt and needed to be ousted?
I don't know, but you probably don't know either. You don't know if there was backroom dealings, like a quid pro quo type deal. You have it on video, Hutch. I mean, you literally have it on video and you're defending it. I mean, just because people rule that there was nothing wrong.
This is why I say that MAGA people are like legitimately stupid.
Bro, you have it on video and you're calling us stupid. Like I can look at the video, see what he says.
You don't understand the context of what you're watching when you watch that video.
Oh,
the context was that Ukraine was a fledgling democracy that had been grappling with serious corruption at the government level. And they were simultaneously asking for financial support from the international community while they were building up their democracy. And what the international community the conclusion that they came to was, we want to welcome you into like our alliances, but in order to do that, you need to clean up the corruption in your country. Viktor Shokin was the prosecutor that was known for not prosecuting corrupt oligarchs and government officials. That was the reputation that he had garnered for himself. The EU looked into it, they agreed. The IMF looked into it, they agreed. The Republicans and the Gang of Eight in Congress looked at it and they agreed that he was corrupt. But you choose to believe this make-believe narrative that Viktor Shokin was looking into Burisma. There is no evidence of that, by the way. And the reason why he was fired was because Joe Biden's son was criminally engaged in some kind of criminal enterprise over there. There's no evidence for any of that. And your whole theory completely crumbles as soon as I tell you that the Republican leadership in the Congress agreed. And they said, yes, we sign off on this, because that was congressionally approved funds. And so he involved Congress. He said, look, you guys approved $200 million to Ukraine. Here's the information. Here's the intelligence that we have on Viktor Shokin. Here's why we want to hold that aid up unless they fire that prosecutor. And the Republicans in Congress looked at the intelligence and they said, yes, we agree. Go ahead and do that. And you think this was all about Hunter Biden?
Hutch, this is the same government that Democrats are putting Ukraine flags in their Twitter bio and funneling $300 billion into the same country. Okay, this is a corrupt country.
You should watch Fiona. Her name was Fiona Hill. She testified in the first impeachment hearing. You should go back and watch her testimony. She was an expert in Ukraine. She talked about this at great length, about all the steps that Ukraine's not a perfect country, but all the steps that Ukraine has taken in the last 10 years to clean up their corruption. You have no idea what you're talking about.
No, neither do you.
You're sitting here.
They've historically been one of the most corrupt countries on planet Earth.
You have no idea.
To funnel hundreds of billions of dollars into this country.
You have no idea what efforts they have taken as a country to root out the corruption. And even worse than that, you point to one instance of them firing this corrupt prosecutor, and you say it was because of Hunter Biden. You have no idea what Ukraine has done in the last 10 years to address corruption.
So Hutch, let's think about this logically. Why the hell would Hunter Biden be sitting on the board of Burisma when he knows nothing about energy and knows nothing about Ukraine? Do you think maybe it was to garner favor with the vice president of the most powerful country on earth, or do you think they just wanted to have him there because they like Hunter Biden?
I think his son got a job because his last name was Biden. Why do you think Jared Kushner was awarded control of a $2 billion hedge fund by the Saudis 2 months after he left office in 2020 or in 2021?
Well, first of all, Jared Kushner is not even associated with the administration. I mean, I know.
Are you kidding me?
But he
wait, hold on, back up. Are you kidding me?
You can't turn on it. First of all, we're talking about Hunter Biden. First of all, Jared Kushner's not Hunter Biden.
Hold on.
Hunter
Let's
Biden's
back
literally
up.
smoking crack.
It's actually worse. It's actually worse.
It's not. It's not even close.
Jared Kushner was an actual part of Donald Trump's cabinet. He was his chief advisor for 4 years.
Yeah, he negotiated peace in the Middle East.
How did that work out?
What do you mean? There was what happened between 2016 and 2020 in the Middle East? I'll give you a hint that nothing
Jared
happened.
Kushner was a member of Donald Trump. He served at the pleasure of Donald Trump in an official capacity in Donald Trump's cabinet for 4 years. And then 2 months after he left office, he was awarded control of a $2 billion hedge fund from a Saudi hedge fund. And do you have a problem with that?
I think that he's probably more qualified than Hunter Biden sitting on the energy board of Burisma.
And what do you know?
I think there's more of an argument. I think there's more of an argument there.
Okay.
I mean, what, you're going to say that Jared Kushner is not more qualified to run a hedge fund?
What are Hunter Biden's qualifications, by the way? Do you have any idea where he went to school, what he did for work, anything?
No, I can just look at him.
No, off the top of your head, I want you to tell me what was his education, what was his business acumen, anything. Do you know any information?
Oh, he's a nobody.
Please
he's
answer.
Always been a nobody.
I want you to answer that question. What do you know about his business acumen, his education, etc.?
Nothing, because you know why?
You don't know anything about. Hold on. So you're sitting here and telling me you know nothing about Hunter Biden's background, and you're going to tell me that. You're going to confidently tell me that Jared Kushner was more qualified to take over this hedge fund than Hunter Biden was to sit on an energy board in Ukraine. How could you possibly know that if you don't know anything about Hunter Biden?
Know why? Because what successful person do you know is smoking crack? No, seriously. He's smoking crack and literally just banging prostitutes, and a lot of them are. What do you mean no? We saw every single thing on the laptop, man. This isn't.
I know this is going to blow your mind, but a lot of really wealthy people kind of like cocaine. I know this is
We're not
heartbreaking.
talking about cocaine. We're talking about crack.
What do you think crack is?
I know what crack is.
What is it?
I enjoy the occasional cocaine myself, but I'm just saying crack is just a cheaper form of just cocaine. It's like it's a rock form. It's just so super cheap.
You're amazing, bro. This conversation has been a lot of fun. I didn't expect it to go this long, but I'd love to have a conversation again in the future if you're down.
Sounds good, man.
I want you to look up.
I do a little bit of trolling in the chat, but I do enjoy your content.
I want you to look up the Gang of Eight being informed of it wasn't Biden's decision, for the record. It was Obama's decision to hold up aid to Ukraine in order to pressure them to get rid of this prosecutor. He sent Biden to act on behalf of the Obama administration. But I want you to look up, they informed the Gang of Eight, and the Gang of Eight agreed that this guy had to go. So your whole premise that this action was taken in a corrupt, like, first of all, do you seriously think that Joe Biden would get in front of like a televised summit and just brag about like getting someone fired who was investigating his son? Do you not, like, at face value realize how ridiculous that is?
Listen, I think that his ego, he's been in Washington for 40 years. He probably thinks he's untouchable. And will you concede that you probably don't know a lot of the relevant facts of what actually happened? Like, I could just look at the video and see.
But you look at the video, but you don't understand the context. Like, you had no idea that the EU agreed. You had no idea that the IMF agreed. And you had no idea that Republicans in Congress agreed that this prosecutor was corrupt and had to go. You had no idea about any of that.
Well, I just think that why would the EU go against Obama's wishes? Like,
can you imagine a possibility where the EU just simply agreed that they looked at their own intelligence and agreed? And that you're jumping to this conclusion of corrupt influence because you have a preconceived notion of what actually happened and you're resistant to new information?
Well, I mean, I look at the video and I literally see, hey, if this prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the aid. I mean, what am I supposed to think when I see that? Just because people ruled that there was nothing bad done. I mean, I literally can see it.
Because there was international consensus with Republicans in Congress that this prosecutor was corrupt.
You act like Republicans are not just not as corrupt, if not more, than the Democrats. We know that Republicans are more corrupt than the Democrats.
Have a little bit of humility and just acknowledge that maybe you got taken for a ride by bad actors who were giving you bad information. Because I guarantee.
Regardless. I mean, yeah.
Is that possible? Is that possible that
of course
you heard some partisan dipshit like Jim Jordan make these ridiculous claims and you took it at face value, and now you're learning new information about what actually happened, and your mind is like batting it back because it just doesn't want to like acknowledge that you got taken for a ride by people that are lying to you?
Hutch, is it a possibility that you were taken on a ride as well? What happened to Democrats questioning like big government and like big corporations? Like, whatever happened to that? Like, now they tell you something, you just believe it. Oh, the vaccines are fine. Oh, like, if everybody wears masks, we're going to be all good. 6 feet social distancing. We're going to lock ourselves in our house. Like, it was all bullshit.
I assume that you're upset that Doge wants to get rid of the CFPB, right?
I don't even know what the CFP is, but
the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They sue companies who commit fraud against their customers. They've returned $22 billion directly back into the hands of Americans who have been frauded by American companies. And
do they want to axe them, or do they just want to audit them?
Oh, they want to get rid of them altogether. Elon. He tweeted out, "Rip CFPB," like he wants it gone. So you say like, what happened? I thought the left were all about questioning big business. Well, this is like the perfect representation. The CFPB exists to serve the American people in the case that they are frauded, that a fraud is committed against them by major American companies. And again, they have a proven track record. They have returned $22 billion directly into the hands of American consumers that have been frauded by schools, by companies, et cetera, et cetera. Would you want to get rid of that kind of an agency?
Well, I'm not going to comment on that because I haven't done my research into it. But what I will say
look
is,
into it. Look into it.
I will. But what I will say is, and I know this is going to tick off everybody, but I mean, Elon Musk is the most transformative person of this century. He's the richest man on the planet. He's literally doing things for mankind that nobody wants to acknowledge anymore because he endorsed Donald Trump. But, you know, if he thinks something is fishy with a certain agency, you know, I tend to believe him. Like, I tend to believe that there's going to be some type of fraud related to these agencies.
Really? Do you believe him when he says that he could have got the astronauts home and that they were abandoned? And that do you think that he's being honest when he says that?
Once again, I don't know. I don't care. And even if
what do you mean you don't care? He's accusing the former president of abandoning, marooning U.S. astronauts on a space station.
Well, do you think that if the only option was Elon going up there and saving them, do you think that the Biden administration would want to give him that credit?
Yes.
Or do you think that they would just
I don't think Biden cares. I don't
think Biden cares.
No, I don't think Biden considers the politics of something like that.
Well, he doesn't care because he doesn't know where he is, but his aides and his chief of staff and everybody, they care. They know about the optics of what it would do.
They awarded billions of dollars of subsidies to Elon's companies during the Biden administration. Under the Biden administration, NASA spent billions of dollars, gave to SpaceX for contracted work. It happened during Biden's watch. Do you think he gives a f*** that's Elon Musk? He doesn't care. If he can get people to space, great.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely wrong.
What's wrong?
I really don't. I think that since Elon Musk came out and endorsed Trump and bought Twitter and was showing his conservative views, I don't think that the previous administration would do anything to bolster support for Elon Musk.
But they did. They abandoned an effort with Boeing and hired SpaceX in September to pick up these astronauts.
Okay. So wait,
that's a multiple hundred
contracts in September.
Yes, they ironed out an agreement with SpaceX that they would bring those astronauts home. The original take-home date was in February, and then SpaceX asked for more time so they could test one of their vehicles. But they came to that agreement in September. That's a multi-hundred million dollar contract.
Yeah, I mean, even if that's true, I mean,
it is true.
It's okay, but okay, let's say it is true. I don't care. The main mission of what he's doing with Doge is so much greater than astronauts on the ISS. Like, who the hell cares? I mean, the goal of shrinking government's a once in a lifetime opportunity that we need to take.
You don't think it's a little like alarming that he fired a bunch of people that were in charge of our nuclear stockpile, and then once he realized that these people were essential, had to rehire them immediately? How is that efficient?
No, I don't. When you're dealing with the scale and the size of the US government,
how is that efficient?
I don't know if you've listened to Kevin O'Leary talk about this, but he says that happens all the time when companies are downsizing. Wrongful terminations will happen.
We're not talking about companies. We're talking about people who are in charge of our nuclear stockpile.
But the U.S. government, as much as people don't want to admit it, needs to run like a business and does because we rely on revenue and income. Revenue and income. So I mean,
what's this in a capitalist structure? What's the single purpose of a company?
To make money.
What about what's the purpose of government?
Well, I mean, it depends what point of view you're looking at. From
is it to make money? Is it to make a profit?
Well, no, it's to be able to defend its citizens, defend its own land.
So we're talking about two things that have entirely different incentive structures. You realize that, right?
The government needs to make money to be able to provide services that benefit the American people.
Do they need to make a profit?
The social programs that you guys want so bad.
Do they need to make a profit?
Well, they need to be able to pay off debt, right?
I'm trying to get you to understand that I think it's flawed logic to say that you should run countries like companies when we're dealing with entirely different sets of incentives.
Well, at the end of the day, you need to pay off debt. Like, we're $36 trillion in debt. It goes up $2 trillion every year. At some point,
then I assume you're going to oppose making Trump's tax cuts permanent unless he pays for them, right?
Well, yeah, we're going to pay them through tariffs and cutting government spending.
And what if that doesn't happen? Just humor me. You know, I mean, that's how it played out in the first administration. He just did the tax cuts, didn't pay for them, and added $2 trillion to our deficit. So like, let's just say 3 years from now, it turns out that that the tariffs didn't pay for the tax cuts and that he just exploded our deficit again. Will you look in retrospect and say that that was irresponsible of him?
I'll say it's just business as usual. I mean, literally, there's been no change. The debt's been going up every single year.
So it wouldn't be that bad to you if he just added to the deficit and didn't pay for it?
Well, I think, if he wasn't able to pay for the tax cuts, like, George Bush did tax cuts as well, and a lot of people benefited.
George W. Bush did tax cuts. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it benefited a lot of middle-class Americans.
He also exploded the deficit. That's when the deficit started to get really out of control, was on his watch. But it's funny to me because you claim to be a conservative. I don't know what your principles are, because one minute you'll tell me that government needs to get its reckless spending in order, and then the next minute you'll tell me, well, if he explodes the deficit 3 years, and 3 years from now we learn that it wasn't paid for, that the tax cuts just once again added to our deficit, you turn around and say, well, it's business as usual. I don't know what you believe in.
It
seems like you're just pro-Trump rather than being like an actual conservative.
Well, no, if the tax cuts benefit me, like I pay less taxes, like I pay less taxes for like the middle class people and like
even if it adds to our deficit.
I mean, obviously that's not we don't want that. We don't want it to add to the deficit, but at the same time, the Democrats like yourself, like you guys advocate for all these great social programs. What do you think? What do you think's going to happen with the deficit?
What happened to the deficit when Biden was president?
I mean, I know that inflation went to the highest ever.
Well, regardless, what happened to the deficit when Biden was president?
Yeah, I've seen the numbers. It went down, but at the same time, you can argue that it didn't because inflation, because they money printed so much that they paid for these programs.
Do you realize that Donald Trump signed 2 stimulus packages into law when he was president? You realize that he did a shitload of spending, right? During
You're talking about when COVID hit.
Yeah. To the Paycheck Protection Program and there was like an injury fund as well. They spent trillions of dollars on COVID stimulus spending.
Yeah,
you realize that? Do you think that contributed to eventual inflation that happened?
Oh, absolutely. I know it did.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, we saved our economy from like going into a depression. Like, obviously,
I mean, listen, I agree. I agree that the COVID spending was necessary to keep people afloat, and I'm very glad that we did what we did to make sure that families were able to like pay rent and spend money on medicine and buy food and take care of their kids, et cetera, et cetera. I'm saying that inflation was an inevitable price to pay for that, and Donald Trump contributed to that inflation with his own COVID spending, which people like you turn around and blame entirely on Biden, which is ridiculous.
Well, you had Jerome Powell talking about how these bills, like especially like the infrastructure bill and everything that was implemented by Biden, like really contributed to inflation.
The infrastructure bill?
Yeah, like you have the Fed chair Jerome Powell literally coming on like the microphone in like 2022 with the fear of a depression, like saying that the spending of the federal government, especially from the executive branch, like was really driving up the inflation. Like
I don't know what you're referring to, but I assume he meant just government spending across the board, because again, Donald Trump spent, I think, $2 trillion on stimulus. And then what do you and Biden didn't? You don't think that people were suffering in January 20th, 2021?
No, I think he probably did, but I think we probably should have laid off like these huge, massive bills that were being proposed by them and were being passed.
Well, if you're going to blame Biden for inflation because of domestic stimulus programs, I don't know how you couldn't similarly pass the buck to Trump in this spot. But I'm gonna go. We've been having too much. Yes. Enjoy your weekend. It was good talking to you. Let's do this again.
Yep. Alrighty. Sounds good. Have a good weekend.
We're never getting these people back, bro. We're never getting them back. We've lost them forever. We've lost an entire generation of good young men to fucking podcasts and Donald Trump.